Hello, and welcome to the Innovia Conversation. I'm Steve Waltz.
And I'm Jeff Progulski.
And Jeff, today, I'm very excited about this podcast. It only took us a year and a half, but we finally got our owner and founder to get on a podcast with us. So pretty excited.
We landed the big fish.
We landed the big fish. Now, what's his name again? Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Donavan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I think he needs like a proper introduction, like a drum roll. And now wait, what is it? What is your official title at Innovia now, Donavan?
It is chairman.
Chairman.
All right. So let me start over again, Jeff. We'd like to welcome the chairman of Innovia Consulting. We're excited to have Donavan Lane with us today. Donavan, welcome.
Welcome, Donavan.
And I am so honored to be here. I tell you, boys, you are so world renowned now. There's so many cool things that you guys have done on your podcast that it's like, oh my God, I get to be part of this one. This ought to be fun.
Well, that's interesting, Donavan, since you said you've only listened to about one of them. So, but I won't bring that up. Half the people that we've had,
but I've heard of all of them.
I've heard. I've seen it on the chat.
You guys are like famous. It's just really cool.
So maybe Jeff, now it's kind of funny. We've had some people on here that like, oh, we didn't know you had one until you invited us. But double digits, right, Jeff? We're up to at least, 14, 15, 16 listeners now, or what do you think?
Yeah, at least. If we filter out family, it's like it's back to single digits. But hey,
can't filter out family on that.
We're a work in progress.
That's right. And
so when do we get to start asking Donavan questions?
Well, I think we should start asking them questions now. I think we should fire away. So
awesome.
On it, but you want to go first? You want me to go first?
No, I have all the in-depth follow-up questions, so I'd like you to lay the foundation here.
Nice. And Donavan, Jeff told me. I said, Jeff, how many people we have at Innovia? And he goes, I think 50, 60. He goes, but Steve, you need to know something. You're at least in the top 50 hires in the history of Innovia. Yeah, so that's what I got to deal with all the time here. But you know what? We weren't always Innovia Consulting. We started out as ABC Computer. I call it the phone book company. Is that kind of how you got that name, or tell us how you got started?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. So, about 6 weeks before graduation high school, I didn't know what I was going to do. And all my friends are going off to college. I'm like, man, I got to do something. I don't like working outside in the cold. So I said, so I went down to the guidance counselor. I said, I need to do something. And she says, well, what do you like doing? She says, well, I took this computer programming class on an Apple II Plus computer. And I really like that. I can say hello 50 times, 10, 20, 30, 50, go to 10, and she says, well, why don't you just go to a tech school for that? So I entered into tech school. And found out I was a horrible programmer. I love to do it, but it was, it's funny because I didn't do very well. And then, but I stuck to it and I graduated, right? And, not exactly at the top of my class. And then, I thought, well, I went for the interviews and they said, Donovan, you're just a horrible programmer. We're just not going to hire you. And I said, well, but I can do this. And found out that I'm probably better off selling computers than I am developing on them. And so there was this ad in a newspaper that said, selling Apple II Plus compatible computers. Well, I can do that in little Waiwego, Wisconsin, right in the middle of the state. And so I went for the interview and I got it. And I started selling Apple II Plus compatible computers that were Franklin's, and then the company, the guy that it was just me and him. I was selling these computers out of the back of my car. I'd go to the fairgrounds and set up my little booth, and insurance agents were back then were using these things for calculating their insurance quotes and that kind of stuff. But it came with a spreadsheet and a word processor called Ace Writer and Ace Calc, and I was the master of Ace Calc. So but because of the whole kind of development understanding, I could create these little programs. Well, what I came to realization real quick, that in order to sell somebody a computer, I had to sell them something that it could do. Okay. So then we came up with this. There was an inventory system or an accounting system called Redwing Business Systems out of Redwing, Minnesota, and it was developed for an Apple computer, and it came on a 5.25-inch floppy disk. And so what I did is we started selling an accounts receivable program, and an accounts payable program, and an inventory program with this thing. And that's how you could sell it. So we were selling what you could do. It was, and part of why that kind of came natural to me was I had 3 semesters of accounting, with my programming degree, and I hated it. And now it's the number one thing I use. Well, anyway, so about 6 months after I went to work selling the equipment. It was really hard to get people to buy this stuff. It's just really.
And Donovan, can I just interrupt and ask, what year is this approximately?
This was 1983.
Awesome.
So Jeff,
All
can you imagine being at the county fair and Donovan's got his trunk open? Hey, come over here. Let me show you this computer.
No, sorry,
but there is an interesting story about that county fair that we'll get off on a quick tangent. You'll love this one. So I bought this 1960 Ford van for $50. And at that particular county fair, you remember they had the tractor pulls, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to see the tractor pull. I had $10 in my pocket, right? And I went to buy a ticket, and they said it sold out. So I said, well, crap, I would love to see it. And I noticed that right between the high fence and this garage was like this perfect little spot I could pull this van into. So I pulled it up there, and I got up on the roof of the van, and I could watch the tractor pull, right? So about 2 seconds later, a guy comes, walking by, says, because again, sold out, you can't even buy a ticket, right? And he said, well, can I come up there? And I said, $5. He says, okay. He hands me $5. He gets up on the roof of my truck. Remember, I only paid $50 for this thing. And 2 minutes later, another guy comes around. Same story, $5. I had 25 people on the top of my van at that fair.
You paid for your van, and then some at the county fair.
Then they would. So this is where the entrepreneurial thing starts, right? So then they would go from my van to the roof of the garage that was right there, and so now we had about 50 people up on the roof, right? Well, then I wanted to charge them $1 to get down, and they didn't like that. Anyway, we would go to the fairs, and we would go to anywhere that you could think of to sell equipment, and then this accounting thing got to be a pretty big thing. Well, anyway, about 6 months later, the owner and I was the company, and that company was called Agribusiness Computers, and the idea was to sell these computers to farmers, and they would do sprayer and field calculations and that kind of stuff. But, well, it's not me not understanding farming. I didn't do so well at that part, but I did well at business. No, anyway, so then about 6 months later, the Ibm PCs came out. I mean, these are big. I mean, this is a big thing. So the owner of Agribusiness Computers wanted to go to sell IBM equipment, but for that you had to be licensed, and you had to have all the storefronts, and you just couldn't sell stuff out of the back of your car. So he went to Appleton, big city of Appleton, to manage that company, and we kind of folded Agribusiness Computers. And he said, well, do you want to come with me? You can, Donovan. Or do you want to? But I said, I like this little Wapaka area. It's kind of fun, and it's cool, and I like it up here. So anyway, so I said, I think I'll just hang out my own shingle. And so I worked with another guy for a little while, and I worked with some schools because schools back then had all these Apple Plus things. And then finally one day I said, I think it's just time for me to do my own thing. And about a month later, I got a big school contract. And I walked into the bank in Waiwega, and I said, I think I want to start my own business. And Ray Nellis said, Donovan, that sounds like a great plan. I suppose you'll need a checking account. And I said, yes, I will, sir. And he says, well, what are you going to call this company? And I really hadn't thought about that. And I said, well, how about ABC? He says, done. And in the back of my mind, I remember, agribusiness computers kind of got in there a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
And, but I had to come up with a name for the checking account, and that's where ABC came from. And so fast forward is, we started, working with companies that wanted accounts receivable done. And I thought, well, in order to sell you the computers, I tell you what, I came up with this idea. There was a service station in Wapaka that said they were doing all of their receivables for all of their people that bought gas. Back in the day, you would go there, you'd fill up your truck, and then they would send you a bill with little receipts at the end of the month. And I said to Jim Klisman, the owner, I said, I can automate that for you. Tell you what I'll do is I'll put all your stuff on the system. I'll enter all your customers. I'll enter all the receipts. And then I'll do your billing monthly for you, and I'll charge you, I forget what it was, $500 or $100 or whatever. And then whenever you want to, you can just buy the whole thing and just continue on yourself, and I'll be done. And it was kind of an entry level way for him to get into buying some equipment. He said, yeah, I'll do that. So, that was a rough one. that goal line was a crash and burner too. But anyway, so then, but we got into selling inventory systems to feed companies, and again, my background was all business, so it was all inventory calculations, and then we would get a couple more, manufacturing customers and customers that wanted to, do billing and payables, and so we kind of grew this thing, and then by about the late 80s, there was another system that was being sold, and this was on IBM computers now, OS, and it was SBT, and it was this little company out of California that made programs from DBase, which are like a database management system, and in fact, our very own Tom Doran, and that team, they started out the same way in Indiana with the exact same software. So then there was a reseller for SBT that was in the area, and unfortunately he passed away, and he had about 10 customers. And and one of them came to me and said, "Hey, we would love to have you work with us, but we need some support on this system called SBT." And I thought, well, it's a much better system than this Redwing software, and I think we'll just convert all of our customers over to SBT, and we did that. But the thing that SBT had that was really cool is it was made for manufacturing. So you could create a production order, a bill of materials. You create a pick list, and you could actually make a finished good product. So you would relieve inventory and put finished goods back in.
So Donovan, was SBT the one? I had a customer tell me that if they unplugged, if they unplugged it, like they lost everything. Was that SBT, or was that a different system?
It was horrible.
So it was SBT.
It was horrible. So what happened was it didn't have a really stable system, operating or database. So it had, if you think about it, when you create a transaction, you have a transaction and then like a customer file. The customer file's got a balance. Your balance starts at 0. You sell the customer an item for $100, and it updates the customer record with $100. Sell the customer another item for $50. Then the customer balance is $150. Well, if something whacks up, in that transaction of the $50, all of a sudden the customer's got a balance of $150, and the transactions only show $100. Okay? Well, every time a storm would come through and there'd be 10 people in the system, or someone kicked the power plug in the middle of posting a sales order, part of the customer record would get updated, but then part of the transaction would be toasted. And they were wild. They'd be wild. And so it would be funny because we'd have customers like in Minneapolis, and they would call up and say, "Hey, Donovan, there's a storm coming." And I would call all my customers in Appleton and say, "Hey, shut your computers down. Storm's coming through."
Nice. So you went from SBT. How long did you do SBT before you went to Navision?
Well, it was probably about 10 years, but an interesting thing along the way is it wasn't there was 2 versions of SBT. And when you think about Business Central and Nav and just what you can do, now with what it was back then, early on, these systems were easy to set up. I remember going into a weekend and setting some of these things up. And so that was in the early 90s. And the flavor of the version of SPT was called Series 7, right? And then Vision Point. But it was horrible. Again, you'd crop files and people would pay us to fix their files. And it was the worst service money you could get because they weren't getting anything of value for it. But then what happened was, they came out with a Pro Series of a system that really worked well for manufacturing, and that's when we got into food manufacturing. I mean, this had batch-based things, making things to order, recipes, specific gravity, and all the things you deal with manufacturing food. But the same issues. The database was very unstable. I remember putting an update on, and I'll get to Navision in a second. I remember putting an update on and shutting down the ability to do cash receipts for 2 weeks. I mean, can you imagine not being able to post a check in your system 2 weeks?
Did that cost extra for that option, or was that included?
Customers were just wild. But you know what they loved about the software is you could modify it. So you get a customer. What makes your company unique? You have some sort of unique business special value that you have, whether it be just-in-time inventory or whether it be there's something that's a competitive edge that you have, the way you price things, and so a lot of those things are modified, right? And they loved it. So it was this perfect love-hate relationship. They loved the software, but they hated that it was unstable. So anyway, but we got so tired of putting on updates and breaking the software, and people would just, oh my God, I didn't want to put an upgrade on. But they also had this really cool thing called a configurator, where you could, for windows and doors as an example, like you could pick as a left-hand door, right-hand door, as you need a wood grade or whatever. So there was 2 customers that we had I was prospects that I thought would just be perfect for SPT, and we went to visit them. One was Trimpack, company up in Wausau, and we went up there and showed them that we could do with SPT with this little configurator. And a couple of weeks later, said, Don, we love you. We appreciate your passion, but we saw this software called Navision, and it was just more suited for us. And we're not used to losing. I mean, we were growing quite well at that point. We had some really good professionals, a lot of support staff, and a very good reputation.
So how big was the company at that point, Donovan?
We probably had about 15 employees, maybe 20 employees. Okay. But we were very well renowned, in the upper Midwest for delivering really good manufacturing systems. And that's when I got to be good friends with Tom Dorn and Freya and the folks from PMI from South Bend, because they were doing the same thing. Right? Anyway, so then we lost that opportunity with Trimpack to this system called Navision. And I'm like, oh, what is this stuff? And then a couple weeks later, the Culver's franchise, Culver's Burgers, they gave a call, and they were working with Virtual Crowdsource accounting firm to do a software selection. They called up and they said, we'd like to have you come up and show us your system. It's very simple. We have all of these restaurants, and all we simply want to do is take their sales off their cash register and upload them to the general ledger, inside of corporate in Sauk City. And that we can, and SPT was great for importing data and integrating things. So I thought, man, we got this one in the bag. And the 3 of us from the office, we marched down to Sauk City and had this great presentation. And at the end of the day, I'm like, man, we got this thing. I'm so sure of it. I would buy the software first. A couple of days later, they call back. Sorry, Donovan. We really appreciate your passion. We appreciate, what you do as a company, but we saw the software called Navision. At that point, I slammed my cup down, and I'm like, what the hell is this shit? Forgive my name. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to check this stuff out. And so I looked up Navision at that time. We didn't have Google back then, remember? And so I looked at Navision. I gave them a call, and I said, you know what, we're an SPT reseller, and we're just looking to see what you got. And I said, I got 3 things for you. And if it's not capable of doing these 3 things, then I don't even want to talk to you. Number 1, I want to be able to modify it. I have to be able to add a field to a customer table that's unique, that only Shep's Ice Cream knows, right? And that's it. And then I want this thing to be dummy proof. If I kick the power plug in the middle of a lightning storm, I want this thing to be stable. I don't ever want to fix a file. Yeah. And the third thing is, when you send me an update, I want to be able to put on an update and not break anything. I want good code. And those 3 things. If you can't do those 3 things, I don't even want to look at it. She says, Donovan, I think we can do that. And she flew up from Atlanta, sat down with us, and Dawn Yeager was her name. And
this is when it was Navision, right?
Yeah, this was Navision. And I said, now I want you to put a sales order in, and excuse me just a second. I kind of moved her over to the side, and I took her little laptop, and I'm technical, right? I'm hardware wise, and I got my finger on the battery on the back of the laptop, and I said, now hit the post button. And just as she did that, I yanked the battery out of the back of the laptop. And I said, now, what are you going to do? And she was kind of flabbergasted. And so we popped the battery back in. It took about 10 minutes for that PC to come back up, right? We got back into the database, and holy cow, it rebuilt itself. It said, please wait. And it grabbed everything, put it all back and down. She said, well, it's got something called versioning, where it takes a slice of time and it knows every keystroke that you're entering, and it captures that version. So if Jeff Pergowski on his system is entering something, he's got a version too. Well, anyway, bottom line is it did it. And at that point we said we're hooked. And so we went to try to convert our SPT customers over to Navision, and that didn't go so well because it was a more educated customer that needed Navision. It was a more expensive system. It wasn't something you could install on a weekend. And it took an implementation strategy to do it, because the chart of accounts was different. You could slice and dice the chart of accounts. There was a lot of setup, and on top of that, it took a commitment. And this is what differentiates Innovia from any other ERP based system. Is in order to sell Navision, you had to be certified, not certifiable, certified. And what that meant is that you had to make a commitment of sending at least 5 people. You needed to have a dedicated developer, a dedicated salesperson, maybe it was 3. No, it was 5. It was 5 different people because you needed you needed a business analyst, and they all had to pass tests. And the most difficult one was a development test. And you couldn't even show the software until you passed their test with 80% or higher. And you had the training was free, but you had to send everyone down to Atlanta for the training for a week. So we basically shut our company down for about 6 weeks, and we couldn't pass it up. Well, anyway,
that's an investment.
Yeah, it was a huge investment, and it's like anything else. You got to buy. You have to own it. You have to buy into it, and you have to jump in with both feet. And so we retooled our entire company. We said we stopped selling any SPTs, and that was about right at the .com era, about 2001. And we retrained the whole company in how to deal with SPT and Navision, and we stopped with SPT. And then a couple of years later, we actually even just gave the customers to another SPT reseller, and we just focused on Navision. And that was it. That's how we started with Navision, and it was not an easy start. I mean, we crashed and burned on the first probably 15 installs because it's so in depth. There's so many things you can do with it. Right. And we grew. Oh my goodness sakes, did we grow?
So before we go on, Jeff, do you have any comments you want to add to what Donovan just said?
No, I'm just furiously taking notes because I've heard 17 different versions of why ABC Computers was called ABC Computers, and now I have it.
Now we actually know.
That's right.
Awesome.
And so why are we called Innovia? So
Yeah, that was my next question, Donovan. So let's fast forward. I think we launched in 2015 in October in Reno, right? Is that that's when we let the world know we became Innovia Consulting. So yeah, one of the things I have on my list here to make sure before we end this is that why Innovia Consulting?
Well, so ABC Computers had an amazing brand. I mean, we were renowned, and at that point we were in 13 countries, and we just we had this amazing brand of good service, good support, 24/7. Hiring the best professionals, and but whenever we would get called for a prospect would call us, we would say we're ABC Computers. They're like, well, do you sell software or are you a computer? So we really weren't at that point. We stopped even selling hardware. We weren't even turning screwdrivers, and so we really, our name was confusing. Are you a computer company? Are you an infrastructure company? Are you tech, or are you a professional ERP company? And so we thought, I think we need to rebrand this. So we tried it. We tried it earlier. We actually tried it in 1995 to change the name, but people knew us as ABC. In fact, they knew us as Donavan. I mean, Donavan had the brand. They said, if you need a system, just call Donavan. Well, Donavan meant 25 employees back then. And so the name and the brand, augment each other, right, Steve? And
yeah, I think it was a good move because you think about how it used to be Apple Computer. Now it's Apple. It used to be Ford Motor Company. Now it's Ford, right? Because they're beyond just that one product type of thing. So
yeah. And and our forte is we are only nav. I mean, there's a lot of different ERP systems. In fact, even at Microsoft, when we took this on, there was 4 product lines, Solomon, Great Plains, Navision, and Exapta. And then this other systems that we don't even hear a whole lot about them anymore. There's probably 1,500 different ERP systems. So what makes you the best? Focus on one thing and one thing only, and we focus on nav, and we're the best worldwide. We have the deepest bench, and so we needed to basically brand that. And when I say deepest bench, what I mean is when you're really good at something, you think about the doctors at Mayo Clinic. When they're really good at something, they want to be by other doctors of the same area. So when you look at developers and application consultants that really understand nav, they want to work with other really good nav people. And so that's what we did. We built up so we went through a whole marketing study, and they did a color selection and name selection. We came up with Innovia, and it came out with a lot. It didn't take long, I would say. And Jeff, you were here at the time, so maybe a couple of years, and people didn't even say ABC anymore.
Right. Yeah. It probably went faster than us still referring to Business Central as NAV.
Right.
Even though Microsoft is rebranded.
It reminded me when I was with the pharma company, and we would name drugs, and we would pay these companies hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, to come up with these names of these exquisite drugs. And I kept thinking when Microsoft changed it from Navision to Nav to Business Central, thinking, they paid somebody millions of dollars for Business Central. And I can't remember who it was in the company. It was either you or Tom said, did they ever think about Navision?
It was Marco Princic. Yeah, we were in a room together, a private room with just partners. And we were kind of getting upset over the whole name change because it was, Dynamics 365 Business Edition, and it's like, guys, we don't even know what to call this thing. And as I looked at Marco and I said, highly suggestion. I think that Navision actually is a good brand.
It is. There's Jeff, over 200,000 customers now worldwide, and they say 10% Donovan's in the U.S. Does that sound about right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's Navision. Well, when it was Navision alone, it was in 107 countries and 41 languages. I mean, this is the most widely used ERP system on the planet. And when, it has to be doing something right to be the best of the best. And even when you think about it, if nothing alone, it's herd mentality. If 97% of the world uses Navision, then you're going to have things that are made to connect with it. Well, think about Outlook. I mean, 97% of the business planet uses Outlook. So if you send an email or Word, let's just use Word as an example. So if you're going to send a Word document, you want other people to receive it. Well, communication isn't communication unless it's received, right? So with Navision, you can't go wrong because the majority of the planet uses it. Yeah. And so now Business Central. But we, Steve, another thing too is we just bet on the right horse. I mean, so sometimes, even a blind squirrel gets a nut.
I got you. I got you. And well, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
There you go.
You were with SBT and it's like when you said Culver's and you heard twice in a row, you're like, okay, maybe there's something I need to look at. And that's called change. And a lot of people don't want to change, right? Because it's easier to stay with the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And that's kind of what, a lot of calls that I get, right? Yeah. And you hear, some of the stories and so we're going to have you back on another podcast, Donovan, because I think this is really good stuff. But what I'd like to do is get into a couple things because, it's when, when people are we'll talk about where the company is now, your vision to get it now, where you see it going. But it's interesting because like when I came over from large pharma, and we always talk about everybody has like 8 degrees connection with Tom Doran. It's like what that Kevin Bacon analogy, right?
Yeah.
I worked with Tom a long time ago, and it was funny because he was ABC Computer. I'm like, gosh, Tom's selling used computers. What the heck, right? And and then after we got had more conversations, it's like kind of like what it is. And the thing that I hear a lot from people is like, and you said we were joking about it earlier. Jeff, Donovan, I'll be on these calls with prospective customers. He's like, yeah, we're all cookie cutters. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm trying to explain to him why we're different. He's saying, no, we're all the same. I know. We were laughing about that, but
now you understand. So when we went to Atlanta to get trained, all of the partners back, and there's not that many of them. There's only about 100 and some partners back then, and even still the same. But what differentiates us really is we care. So let's talk about that for 1 second, and then we'll have another podcast on the day. But what makes Innovia so much different? We care. And if you stop caring, your company just kind of goes away. It just kind of crumbles. So what do we care about? Well, first and foremost, we care about our team, our employees. The customers don't come first. Now they're here, boom! Oh my God! Customers don't come first. No, your team comes first. Your customers come first. If I take good care of Jeff Pergalski is going to take good care of the customer. You want a customer. I love what Tom says, and sometime we'll have a podcast with Tom. But Tom says, we do business with fair-minded people. Right. And so we don't throw our folks into a meat grinder. I mean, so the customer selects Innovia, but Innovia also selects the customer.
Absolutely.
And so we care about our staff, we care about employees, but most importantly, we have dignity, and we want to make sure that we do a really good install. I mean, there's good, and there's good, and there's really good, and that's what we're proud of. We're proud of the fact that we can do some amazing things and have amazing customer loyalty. And by the way, we still have Culver's today.
And that's nice. And Jeff, when I was, I remember talking with Tom after Donovan said that the first time, and then I kind of, after hearing Donovan and we talked through it, it's like, he meant we're all kind of trained the same way, right? They go through the same training, but at the end of the day, and I think it's what makes Innovia different is that how we're built. The internal culture, understanding, people that are in a system that is maybe they bought from the lowest bidder. They didn't do their discovery up front. And there's, Donovan, when I came over to this world, I had no idea how much pain there was in ERP because When I was with Abbott, we had SAP, which stood for Suck All Profits, right? But they kept the salespeople out of that, and we had Salesforce to go screw up, the CRM part of it. But when I hear some, when I talk with people, some of the pain I hear, and it's like, we understand that. That's kind of how we're building. And the thing that blows me away, and maybe you can talk to this, is that 30% of end users change partners annually.
Yeah.
Annually.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that's kind of an issue. But you look at Microsoft's viewpoint, well, they don't really care, right? Because you own the software. I mean, they care, but they really do. How much do they care? Because if you flip to somebody else, they're still getting their money, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know what, Steve, too, if you think about what you just said there, and it's so true, 30% of customers switch partners every year. Doesn't mean they're switching software. See, what's unique about NAV is people love the software, which is totally unlike most ERP systems. Most systems, they hate the software. It's a love-hate relationship. It's not so in the NAV world because the stuff can be adapted. You can't hate something that you made. You can't hate something that's your own idea. Well, but the partner just stops caring. I mean, the number one thing we hear, my partner won't call me back.
Oh yeah.
My partner won't call me back. If you show up for class,
yeah,
you'll get a seat.
Yeah. Does Jeff call you back? Because he's a little slow in getting back with me.
And so early on,
Steve, that's strategy.
It's your strategery. I'm sorry. Okay.
Early on, what we realized is that customers need an advocate. And at first, the advocate was a small group of people, that worked for Innovia. And as we grew, we realized that the customer engagement team is so important. And what they do is customer engagement team works. They're free to a customer. Every one of our customers gets a free CIO. I mean, these are C-level executives that can run their company. They're highly paid, highly educated. They know the software, they know the business, and they're free. And they can help scope needs. They can help understand their problem. And you know what? At the end of the day, because we give them a free customer engagement person, they're going to be okay. When 30% of those customers say, "Man, I'm looking for a new partner," and they talk to Innovia, we look at them and say, "You know what? You're going to be okay."
Right. Yeah, and when I talk with prospective customers, it's like when I tell them that we'll come on site for free, and they don't get a bill for the travel or whatever, they're like, "What'd you just say?" and I'll talk to them, and I think it's so cool because when I talk to people, it's like they're free to you, but they're not cheap to us. And when you did that strategy and going so obviously being an entrepreneur, you seem like you take the risk and that vision of going to SBT to Innovision to NAV BC and then kind of go into that model. You took a big gamble, right? But you saw the pain in the channel, obviously.
Well, and here's what I found, Steve. It's a really good question because, companies are a fluid, moving entity. I mean, the government looks at them as a person. I mean, a government has, the company has its own social security number called an FIN number. And so the company takes on the personality of its owner. Well, I just lost train of thought. Don't you love that? So when go back to what you're saying, Steve, for just a second. The question you're asking.
So we're a company now. We're close to about 60 employees.
Yep.
And you built this customer engagement team with Tom leading the way. And the thought, the risk of going out there to take somebody, because you look at some of the credentials that our team has. It's pretty impressive.
Now I know what I was thinking. So a company has to remake itself about every 10 years. I mean, if you made fax machines 20 years ago, I don't think you're selling a lot of fax machines today. Think about the technology of a BlackBerry. Think about cameras. I mean, think about watches. We don't Thinking about cameras. We don't buy cameras anymore.
What about shoes?
Except for Jeff Pergolski.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you think about it, every 10 years, Innovia has had to do an amazing metamorphosis, if that's the word for it. We've had to adapt. Every 10 years, we've had to completely remake our company. So what's unique about Innovia today? Right, well, let's look in the last 40 years that we've been on the planet, well, 36 years. So early on it was Apple. Got to get, that's not the vision. That's not the future. Then it became IBM. That's not, and then SBT, then the vision. What is it now? Now it's about cloud. Right? We're moving our servers to somebody else's server room. What makes Innovia so unique? We started selling cloud probably 4 years ago. We are the largest provider of Business Central in North America. That's Mexico, US, and Canada. Nice. Non-distribution. So why is that? Because we took a chance. We went to all our customers and said, we got to jump on board with this, and we got them on early. And now we do. And now we do all the licensing. That's the cool part is Business Central is just one of the Office products, right? So is Office 365. So is Teams. If our customers that are our NAV customers, now we only deal with our NAV customers, but if they want to get Teams, they can call Innovia and we can get them Teams. They can transition their Office licensing over to us, and we can provide their cloud stuff. So we just went through that metamorphosis again. And some partners did and some partners didn't.
That was shocking, Donovan, because Microsoft, when I got hired on 5 years ago, it was cloud first, mobile first. I heard it. And I think it was the Tampa NAVUG meeting when all that rollout came, remember, for Business Central. Yep. And I was on a panel, and when Microsoft kind of made that official launch there, how many partners were like in denial? Like, hello, you didn't hear the message? It's like someone's not. It's like someone's you're not listening. Is what it was. And you saw the vision, you heard the vision, right? And it's great to see that you embraced it, because you're right. It's being in sales for over 30 years, you deal with change. Everybody wants change, but no one wants to change, right? Let's talk about that, Steve. In order to change, you have to have ownership into it. And so why can Innovia do that? Well, first of all, we have an amazing executive team that's not as spastic as I am, okay? They're they're level-headed, Alan and Brian and Chad and Tom. I mean, they just got their stuff together. So you took Alan from our customer engagement team. We're still not happy about that. But that's all right.
Well, there comes a time when the owner has to be big enough to step aside and say, I need help. This company is much bigger than just me. And you need to know when to bring in the big boys, right? So at the same time, you can never lose the founder's mentality.
Yeah.
So what about CSP? What about cloud? Well, what drove that is founder's mentality, is push the button. Like we did not know what's going to happen. So this, right. I know this is a good subject for another day, another podcast. But when we first were transitioning people over to Business Central, and we had to actually, have them click the customer relationship request link, and then we're going to get billed for the software, whether the customer pays us or not.
Right.
We had no idea what the bill was going to be. So can someone that you hire take that responsibility? To just blindly go in and convert 6 customers over, not knowing what the amount of the bill is going to be. So that's why it took the magic here is Alan and Tom and Brian and Jeff and Steve and all of us doing our part to focus on our NAV business while we kind of got morphed into the next 10-year strategy. And so that's what I feel so privileged to be allowed to work on things like that. And it's a blast. It is absolutely the most fun thing ever.
And what's fun on my end, Donovan, and shocking on other ends, is that when people call or I'm talking to them, I say, well, hold on a second. I'll add you or add Alan or I'll add Tom to the call. And they're like, you just had the CEO to the call? Okay, he was
Right.
available. He was available. I asked him, boom, he was on, and that's, and that to create that culture. And that's probably another, I think, a good podcast. So Jeff, we're winding down with a few minutes, and I know you said you had some things you wanted to discuss. So.
Well, actually, I was only hoping to put Donovan under the gun in the same way that he did to me 12 years ago when I was interviewing in his office, and I, like, in that Wapaka office. Steve, I don't know if you had the pleasure of ever being in there, but Donovan's office was about 112 degrees, and so
they have a light beaming on you, like. No,
it wasn't. It was like you were stepping into a sauna. Like, I mean, it was just and so I'm there in my probably borrowed my dad's sport coat and put a tie on and trying to look professional, and I get in to start answering questions, and I'm like, this must be some sort of psychological test. Like, is he gonna sweat? Is he going to say something about the heat? And but no, so in all seriousness, I think one of the things, I've been at Innovia almost 12 years now. When I started, it felt like this really kind of small town Wapaka company that was doing like really cool things, but was sort of like a hidden gem in the heart of Wisconsin. And then, but what I liked about it and why I'm here is because of like you guys. I mean, I love my coworkers. I love the people I worked for. It inspired me. Like, I felt empowered to learn stuff and help customers out. So going from that, when I think I was hired, it was about 25 people to, being almost 60 people now and working globally. And I guess, Donovan, what's your secret? How did you get the company to grow without losing that sort of, camaraderie that a small company used to have or started with?
It goes back to, you got to care, and that founder's mentality. Where Katie bar the door, as my wife says, we're going this way. We're going to get this done, and I'm going to help you do it. And I think part of it, Jeff, is the number. Can you imagine the number of times when you've been out there on the limb trying to fix something or do something, and nobody goes home till we all go home, and making sure that there's nothing scarier than switching someone's email over, or communication methods over to the new cloud licensing. But we're going to make sure that you're okay. And so taking care of Jeff, taking care of Steve, and making sure when you need something, this management team is there. And there's a response, like right now. They're like, when you ask, first of all, it's hard. I mean, let's analyze you for a second. Do you know how hard it is to ask somebody for help? It's a hard
Steve
thing.
Doesn't have a problem.
It's not hard for me, Doctor.
Well,
I get it. Yeah, you're right.
Well, it's difficult. It's demeaning, So when Jeff Perkowski gets to the point where he's got to ask Donovan for help, by golly, use a sense of urgency to help Jeff. Use the same sense of urgency we have to growing and to our customers, to our staff. And I think that's the part of it is why do we have like zero turnover at Innovia? I mean, you ever analyze that? I mean, it's like we have the same people here that have been here for decades, because
we need to talk about that. I got a few we can talk about on a side conversation. Don't worry, Jeff. What's fun? What's fun is Jeff's shoes, man. If you've ever seen, Jeff's shoes, Jeff still skateboards.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, we can there's some of the stuff that Jeff does, but that'd be fun right there.
Yeah. Well, and I want to have a podcast with Donovan to talk about drones, but that's definitely
no. At the end of the day, it's you build a company about people building something together. We're the hidden gem that Jeff was just talking about. I think we're kind of proud of this. Do you know that we're in 5 countries? I mean, it's not just North America. That's just we're the biggest for Business Central. But we've got an office in Sydney, Australia. We have an office in Oslo, Netherlands. We have an office in Belgium. We just put a new office in Ireland. You know, our licensing started out worldwide, goodness sakes, back in the Promega days, you know, with, in fact, Innovia was the first company to create multi-site and global volume agreements with Microsoft, you know. And so companies that buy Navision are companies that basically have offices around the world. Look at Kong. You know, Kong has offices, you know, manufacturing facilities in Australia, you know, and they want one throat to choke. Yeah.
So, gosh, Donovan, this has been fun. Jeff, we'll definitely have to have him back if he listens to at least a couple more podcasts. Well, he can come anytime he wants. He's the owner, right? But Donovan, it was. We appreciate your time and your passion, and you know, and I'm sure you know, as the company moves forward, we're excited about the future with Microsoft and everything. And I think, Jeff, maybe that should be the next one as our vision moving forward and stuff. Because we, you know, one of the hardest things here, we could just talk for hours on it. So, but so basically, I want to say thank you, Donovan. If you like, you can reach Donovan at, you want to tell people how to reach out to you, Donovan, if they have any questions?
Personally. So email address is first initial, last name, D Lane, Lane, at Innovia.com. Call my cell phone, 715-490-0499. You can text or call. You know, and that's the cool thing about being having a really smooth running company is when you do that, you have time. And our leadership team, all of our team, you know, we just make sure that we're efficient. So you got my cell phone, you got my email.
Gosh, if he was a Bears fan, he'd be the perfect owner. But that's another discussion. we got all these Wisconsin Packer fans. But thanks once again, Donovan, for coming. Jeff, anything you want to add before we end this?
Nope, I'm good.
Great. Well, so you can, to all our listeners, you can follow us on LinkedIn. We're heavily involved there. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We appreciate you spending time with us and Donovan today. And Jeff, this podcast is over.
Hasta vista.